What if I told you that one of the most ruthless, heavily optimized, and, well, fiercely protected multinational corporations on Earth occasionally wears sequins and sings about heartbreak?
It is a pretty wild contrast to think about.
Right. I mean, you as a listener are probably incredibly used to hearing about your favorite artists in the context of Billboard chart rankings or, viral dance trends, red carpet outfits.
Or maybe the occasional gossip column.
Exactly.
Because it is an industry built entirely on visibility and emotion, right? The art and
Yeah.
the personality are designed to be front and center, so that is naturally what we all focus on.
But today, we are doing something entirely different. We are asking you to set all of that aside. No melodies, no lyrics, no paparazzi photos.
None of it.
Because today we are diving into a comprehensive financial breakdown. It's a script specifically titled Financial Audit, the Taylor Swift billion-dollar empire.
A fascinating document.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive is singular. We are going to analyze how a single artist transformed into an aggressively optimized billion-dollar multinational corporation. So, okay, let's unpack this.
We really do need to pull this apart layer by layer, because if you want to understand modern generational wealth, you have to look right past the music.
Right past it.
Yeah, you have to examine the raw underlying financial infrastructure. We are not looking at a singer today. We are looking at a highly functional corporate entity. And a corporate entity at this scale requires a massive, reliable engine to generate initial liquidity.
Right, because every empire has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And for this specific ecosystem, that foundational cash flow engine is live entertainment.
Exactly.
But we aren't just talking about, selling out a local arena.
Yeah.
The financial breakdown we are looking at highlights the historic Eras Tour, which grossed well over $1.3 billion in ticket sales alone.
That number is just staggering, but it is really just the baseline metric here.
Wait, really? Just the baseline?
Yeah. What is truly revealing are the margins. The audit notes that the average ticket yields range from $250 to well over $1,200.
Wow.
But beyond just the gross ticket sales, we have to look at the broader financial footprint.
Yeah.
When you factor in local hospitality, travel, consumer merchandise, this single tour generated an estimated $5 billion in global economic stimulus.
That is insane.
Entire cities were seeing their local GDPs temporarily spike just because this operation came to town.
I want to pause here because that level of economic impact, it feels less like a concert and more like a massive corporate product launch.
It absolutely is.
It's just a massive influx of liquid capital. But I am genuinely stuck on the mechanics of this. How does an artist retain so much of the pie when production costs for a stadium show are so sky high?
It's a great question.
Because normally, you have to pay the stadium, the local union crews, the massive logistics of moving a stage that looks like a small city, and most importantly, the promoters.
Right.
Doesn't the promoter usually take the lion's share of the profit because they take on the financial risk?
Usually, yes. But what's fascinating here is how the sheer scale of demand completely flips the traditional business model.
Okay. How so?
Well, you are absolutely right. Normally, the promoter takes a massive cut, the venue takes a cut of the ticketing and merch, and the artist gets what is left after expenses.
The leftovers, basically.
Exactly. But when a corporate entity is the singular driver of a $5 billion economic stimulus, that entity no longer negotiates, it dictates.
Meaning they effectively become the landlord for the night.
They invert the leverage completely. Because the demand to see this tour was so impossibly high, the corporate entity essentially hired the promoters as mere service providers rather than partners.
Oh, wow. So they just paid them a flat fee?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
They dictated the terms to the ticketing agencies and the venues. So after all that massive overhead was paid, the artists retained an unprecedented percentage of the gate revenue.
It's an incredible power dynamic.
Yeah.
But as the financial breakdown outlines, having a mountain of liquid cash sitting in a bank account creates a whole new set of challenges.
It really does. Cash is a liability in some ways.
Right, because liquid cash doesn't build long-term empires. It just sits there.
Yeah.
So how does a corporation turn that massive touring liquidity into passive generational wealth?
By building a moat.
Exactly. They do it by building an absolute fortress of intellectual property.
This is where we transition from short-term cash flow to long-term wealth generation. Because, as you said, a liquid bank account is vulnerable.
It loses value to inflation.
It can be drained, it depreciates. But an IP moat, a fortified portfolio of intellectual property, generates capital while you sleep. The financial script points to her master recordings strategy as an absolute masterclass in risk management.
Oh, I remember when this happened. It was all over the news when an outside private equity firm executed a highly publicized corporate acquisition of her foundational catalog.
A massive...
Yeah, essentially, someone else bought the rights to the original music she built her career on. From a business perspective, losing the rights to your core product sounds like a devastating blow.
It is the equivalent of a hostile takeover, seizing the foundational patents of a tech company. The private equity firm bought those master recordings, assuming they could just sit back and collect the passive revenue off her legacy forever.
Right.
So her strategy was to systematically re-record that foundational catalog.
I have to play the skeptic for a second because I've always wondered about the actual business math behind this.
Sure.
I understand she went back into the studio and re-recorded them, but how does simply making a new version actually dilute the commercial value of the original master tapes?
Well, it's about shifting the market.
But why wouldn't they both just make money? If I love a song from 10 years ago, I'm probably just going to stream the original one I grew up with, right?
That is the exact logical assumption the private equity firm banked on. They assumed consumer habits were too entrenched to change.
Makes sense.
But they entirely underestimated the power of brand loyalty and the mechanics of licensing. She didn't just quietly release new versions, she weaponized her fan base.
Oh, interesting.
She actively communicated to the consumer market, basically saying, this new version is the authentic, ethical product. The old version is unauthorized.
So she essentially initiated a massive global substitution effect.
Yes, and it worked because she controlled the narrative. But there is an even deeper financial mechanism at play here, which is synchronization licenses.
Sync licenses, right?
Yeah. Every time a song is used in a movie, a television show, or a commercial, it requires a sync license. Because she still owned the publishing rights, meaning she wrote the underlying lyrics and sheet music, she had the legal right to veto any commercial use of the old recordings.
Oh, that is brilliant.
Isn't it?
So if an ad agency wants to use her song to sell cars, they have to ask her permission. She says no to the private equity firm's version, but yes to her newly recorded version.
Exactly. She systematically starved the old assets of their most lucrative revenue streams. By cutting off commercial licensing and moving her listeners to the new versions, she initiated a legal, hostile takeover of her own value.
Wow.
The financial implications were immediate. She took a major vulnerability and converted it into an asset replication masterclass.
She basically copy-pasted her own intellectual property, legally stripped the value from the originals, and retained it all for herself.
She did.
And the numbers back it up. Today, her fully owned catalog is conservatively valued at over $500 million. And you stack that replicated IP on top of consistent streaming dominance. Our source notes she averages over 100 million monthly active listeners on global platforms.
And those passive royalty streams generate tens of millions of dollars annually. Every single stream, every radio play, every new commercial sync license. All of that revenue is routed directly back into her primary holding companies.
Which actually brings up a term we see constantly in this financial breakdown holding company.
Yes, a very important concept here.
The script mentions them several times. I think a lot of people hear holding company and just think of some shady offshore bank account. But in this context, it's a very specific corporate tool, right?
Think of a holding company like an enormous legal umbrella. Its only job is to hold the controlling stock or membership interests in other companies.
Okay.
At this level of wealth, you do not want your massive touring revenue, your $500 million IP catalog, and your personal assets all sitting in the same bucket.
Because of liability.
Exactly. If something goes wrong, say a massive liability issue on a stadium tour, you don't want a lawsuit to be able to touch the intellectual property. Holding companies compartmentalize the empire, keeping the liability isolated and the wealth secure.
That makes total sense. It's about building bulkheads in a submarine. So if one room floods, the whole ship doesn't go down.
That's a perfect analogy.
But even with the perfect corporate structure, when an entity has massive liquid capital from a $1.3 billion tour and an untouchable digital IP mode generating millions a month, you hit a completely new bottleneck.
You really do. Hypergrowth forces a business to evolve.
Because eventually you have too much cash.
And cash, especially in highly volatile economic environments, is actively losing purchasing power due to inflation.
So you have to protect that wealth. You have to anchor it to something physical. And the next survival tactic for capital at this scale is tangible premium real estate.
You are transitioning from digital infinite assets like streams and IP to physical finite assets.
And anchor it, she did. Here's where it gets really interesting. The audit tracks a bi-coastal property portfolio valued at a staggering $150 million.
It's massive.
And we are not talking about a nice house in the suburbs. In New York City alone, holding companies tied to the artist systematically acquired nearly an entire block of prime Tribeca real estate.
Right, the Tribeca properties.
Yeah, they combined multiple luxury penthouses into a massive, fortified residential compound worth an estimated $45 million.
It is essentially creating a private, high-security fortress in the middle of one of the most densely populated, expensive real estate markets on the planet.
It's unbelievable. But the West Coast strategy might be even more fascinating. They control the historic Samuel Goldwyn estate in Beverly Hills, valued at $30 million.
Beautiful property.
But they didn't just buy it to live in it. The financial script specifically notes that the property was meticulously restored and successfully granted historical landmark status.
This is a crucial detail.
I read that and immediately wondered, why would a billionaire go through all the bureaucratic red tape of making their own private house a historical landmark? Doesn't that just invite government oversight?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, getting landmark status isn't about vanity. It is a highly calculated economic move.
How so?
When a property achieves that status, it severely restricts certain types of development around it, and it preserves the cultural capital of the asset. You are essentially creating artificial scarcity.
I had thought of that.
Yeah, the audit explicitly states that securing this status significantly increases the property's long-term market valuation while also carrying unique tax implications.
That completely shifts how I view this. It's not celebrity house hunting. It's strategic asset management.
Exactly.
Add in a historic $17 million oceanfront estate in Rhode Island, plus millions of dollars in residential footprints across Nashville, and you start to see the grid.
You have to view this through a corporate lens. This isn't just a collection of places to sleep. The holding companies are utilizing this $150 million portfolio as a financial heat shield.
A heat shield, I like that.
It is physical, it is finite, it appreciates in value, and it completely insulates a portion of her wealth from the digital world's volatility.
Okay, so we have the touring engine pumping in liquid cash, the IP moat generating digital wealth, and the real estate fortress anchoring it all down.
The three pillars.
Right. But executing a $1.3 billion global tour while simultaneously managing a $150 million bicoastal real estate portfolio creates an entirely new problem.
Physical logistics.
Exactly. You have a sprawling international operation that relies entirely on a single human being in specific places at exact times.
Which brings us to the fourth pillar of this empire, the logistics engine, or more specifically, private aviation.
Right.
To run an empire like this, you need rapid, secure international transportation. The audit values her transportation capital at over $40 million, operating through private corporate charters and owned long-range aircraft.
And the overhead to keep that infrastructure operational is astronomical. The annual operating budget easily stretches into the millions when you factor in hangar storage fees, highly trained flight crews on standby, premium aviation fuel, and, specialized corporate insurance policies.
It's a massive ongoing expense.
Okay, I am getting hung up on the jets here. I have to push back.
All right, let's hear it.
We just spent the last 5 minutes talking about her brilliantly using real estate to fight inflation and build appreciating wealth.
Yeah.
So why on earth is she pouring $40 million into planes?
It seems like a contradiction.
It really does.
Yeah.
A private jet is famously a depreciating asset. It loses value the second the wheels leave the tarmac, and it costs millions a year just to keep it from rusting.
True.
Jets are basically flying money pits. Why would such an aggressively optimized financial empire dump capital into something that objectively loses value?
It is a completely fair question, and it is exactly how most people look at it. You and I view a private jet as a depreciating luxury asset.
Because it is.
For us, yes. But we have to completely reframe our thinking for a business entity operating on this specific scale. At this level, it is absolutely not a luxury.
How is a $40 million private plane not a luxury?
Think of the jet less like a luxury vehicle and more like a highly secure fiber optic cable transferring the most valuable data between secure servers.
Oh, well, okay.
When you are the CEO and the primary product of a billion-dollar multinational corporation, your time and your physical security are your most valuable assets.
That makes sense.
The logistics of moving between international tour dates, generating millions of dollars per night in different countries, and moving between those highly secure real estate compounds we just discussed, well, it requires total autonomy.
So you obviously can't be waiting in line at commercial security or dealing with delayed flights, because a delayed flight could literally cost the local economy millions of dollars if a stadium show is delayed.
Precisely. But it goes beyond just avoiding delays. The source script uses a very specific phrase. It calls her the core corporate operator.
The core corporate operator.
Yes. Private aviation ensures that this core corporate operator remains highly mobile and completely physically secure while overseeing international business ventures.
That phrasing really strips away the pop star illusion.
It does.
When you put it like that, you aren't looking at a singer relaxing on a plane. You are looking at the critical central processor of a multinational business being transported securely from one production facility to another.
Exactly. When you view the aviation expenses as a necessary insurance policy on the primary revenue generator, the math completely changes.
It really does.
Spending a few $1,000,000 a year in jet fuel and crew salaries to protect and transport an entity capable of generating a $5 billion economic stimulus is actually an incredibly conservative investment.
I hadn't thought about it like that.
It is an operational necessity to keep the billion-dollar engine running without interruption.
It really is just the cost of doing business at a sovereign wealth level. So what does this all mean?
Let's summarize it.
Yeah, when we zoom out and look at the whole board, we've broken down 4 massive interlocking pillars. First, the live touring liquidity, pulling in unprecedented retained gate revenue from a $1.3 billion global operation by flipping the leverage on promoters.
Second, the intellectual property valuation. The $500 million asset replication masterclass that starved the old catalog of commercial licensing and secured her digital future, generating passive income from over 100 million monthly listeners.
Third, the real estate equity. A $150 million bi-coastal tangible fortress utilizing holding companies and landmark status to shield that massive wealth from inflation and legal liability.
Right.
And finally, the global logistics engine, utilizing a $40 million aviation infrastructure to keep the core operator secure and moving like data through a fiber optic cable.
When you aggregate all of these metrics together, the massive liquidity, the soaring valuation of the IP moat, the hard real estate assets, and the logistics, the financial audit delivers a very clear final verdict.
An estimated net worth of over $1.3 billion, and the official rating from our source material, a flawless, highly diversified corporate ecosystem and a true financial superpower.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. What truly elevates this entity beyond the status of a traditional celebrity?
That's the real takeaway here.
It is the absolute retention of creative control and ownership over brand assets. She didn't just accept a massive paycheck to be the face of someone else's product.
Right, she built the product.
She insisted on owning the underlying intellectual property and building the bespoke infrastructure to distribute it herself. That is the fundamental difference between being famous and being a financial superpower.
It's a huge distinction.
If a single individual can autonomously generate a $5 billion global economic stimulus, and if that same individual can build a diversified corporate ecosystem that rivals major traditional institutions, what does this mean for the future of the economy?
That is a wild thought.
Are we entering an era where the most powerful multinational corporations are no longer faceless conglomerates, but single, highly optimized human beings?
That is definitely something to think about. We loved unpacking this one with you. Keep questioning what you see, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.